It is essential that you properly load your quilt onto the frame. This helps to ensure that the quilt is square with the machine and that you'll be happy with your quilting. The first step is to load the backing fabric to the backing pole, commonly known as the belly bar. Fold the backing fabric in half and find the center. Mark it with a pin at both ends of the backing fabric. Now open up your backing fabric and place it on the frame with the right side down. We recommend the seam of your backing fabric is parallel to the poles. Matching the center of the backing fabric with the center of the leader on the backing pole, start pinning. Pin within the binding area of your backing fabric, or 1/4 inch of the backing fabric. Take a large bite of fabric with the pin. Continue pinning from the center to the left side. When you get to the ends, weave the last pin a couple of times through the fabric and repeat pinning from the center to the right side of the backing. Drop the latch down and begin rolling the quilt back fabric. Smooth the quilt backing as you roll. Make sure the edges are even with each other, no hourglassing on the ends. If necessary, massage your fabric to get the seams straight. Continue rolling and smoothing. Use the edge of the backing as your final reference point to keep the backing square with the frame. Now we're ready to load the quilt top to the middle pole, commonly known as the quilt top pole. Find the center of the quilt top and mark with a pin at both ends. Position the quilt with the right side up. Match the center of the quilt top with the center of the leader. This is the same process that we did with the backing pole. Pin within 1/4 inch binding area from the center out to each side. Pin point to head. Don't leave a big gap between the pins or it'll cause a tension issue when you roll the quilt on the frame. Be very careful to pin that 1/4 inch inside on your quilt top. Pin to the left. Put the edges together, the leader edge and the fabric, and pin those large bites into the fabric. Now we're coming to the end, and this end part we will want to weave a pin, do small bites and weave it into the edge. Sometimes you can turn that pin the opposite direction so that as you're smoothing, you won't get your fingers stabbed. Now we'll move over to the right side and do the same, and then put your ratchet down, and we'll start rolling. Again, smoothing as we roll, watching as the seams go by to make sure that they are level. Use the lines of the quilt to keep the top straight as you're rolling. Watch the ends to make sure that the fabric is not hourglassing. You can massage with your hands to make sure that it's even as it goes across the quilt. It is best if one person does this process. Roll it up, watching as you go that those lines are straight across. If you need to, massage to straighten them out. When you finish, you'll see that that edge lines up straight across the poles. Now it's time to attach the backing to the take-up pole. Unroll your take-up leader so that you have all of it laying out on the table. Unroll your backing fabric so that you can join the backing fabric to the leader. And then with a pin, align the center of your backing fabric to the center mark on your leader. And again, pin across to the left and then pin across to the right. Remember, pin point to end, and then when you get to the end, then weave it so that it secures it. Position the latch and roll the backing to take up any slack. The optional super leader can be attached to the take-up pole. Its extra length makes it a shorter reach to attach the backing. Unroll the quilt top and lay on the backing. Add batting between the quilt backing and quilt top. You can remove one end of the quilt top pole to make this an easier process. Lay the batting against the pins on the backing leader and smooth down. Move that batting edge all the way up to the take-up leader. Remove any loose threads that might show through to the top of the fabric. Now replace the quilt top pole and line up the edge of your quilt top about 1 inch below the edge of the batting. Attach channel locks on the front wheels of the machine to prevent forward and backward movement of the machine. Stitch a plumb line across the top of the backing and batting. This gives you a positioning line to line up the quilt top so that it is square on the frame. Pull the quilt top up to the plumb line and pin every 4 to 5 inches across the quilt. When you pin the top to the plumb line, start in the center and work out to both sides. Now remove the channel locks off of the machine. Move over to the edge of the fabric and within 1/4 inch of the top, bring up your bobbin thread and sew a couple of locking stitches. Baste within the binding area across the top of the quilt. You can use a basting stitch, end regulated, or you can use your manual stitch with a low speed. Another option is to do a wiggle stitch on and off the top edge of the quilt top. When you get to the end, tie off and cut threads. Remove the pins. If you haven't already done so, stabilize your quilt with the clamps and stitch down the sides of the throat space. Baste down the left and right sides of the quilt as far as possible. Be careful not to add too much tension to your side clamps or to the poles. Baste down the left side of your quilt. Adding tension on the front as you go forward helps to stitch it straight. Now you're ready to quilt.